Cathy Engelbert, just way too soft and too weak and too feeble-minded and too incompetent to actually understand this is part of the game. This is the game you play. This is part of the game, Cathy.
Cathy Engelbert, the commissioner of the WNBA, ghosted a scheduled interview with Dan Patrick, one of the most respected voices in American sports media. And she did it while standing 100 yards away on a golf course. 100 yards. Not in a different city, not on a plane, not in an emergency board meeting. On a golf course, within eyeshot of the studio. And as Dan Patrick was going live on air to explain to his audience why the WNBA commissioner was a no-show, the production crew cut to live footage of Engelbert swinging a club in real time. You genuinely cannot make that up. This is the woman who is supposed to be steering the most important growth moment in women's basketball history. This is the person who is supposed to be the face of accountability, the voice of leadership, the adult in the room when the WNBA's credibility is under the national microscope. And she chose golf over journalism. She chose a fairway over her own league. Welcome back. This is Rim Run, and today we are documenting the single most embarrassing act of institutional cowardice the WNBA has produced in the middle of its biggest boom in history, and we are naming every person responsible.
Well, to be fair, Colin, if they can't get their arms around it, and we're in year 3...
Let me tell you why this moment matters more than it looks on the surface. Because on the surface, it looks like a scheduling snafu, a miscommunication, a busy executive who lost track of her calendar. That is the spin, that is the press release version. That is what the people who run this league want you to believe, so you move on and stop asking uncomfortable questions. But here is what is actually happening. The WNBA is in the middle of an unprecedented, undeniable, mathematically verifiable explosion. 3 new franchises have been announced: the Golden State Valkyries, the Portland Fire, and the Toronto Tempo. The Valkyries alone carry a reported billion-dollar valuation. Toronto drew over 20,766 fans for a single game. 20,766. The league is flying private now. Revenue is exploding. Attendance is surging. Caitlin Clark has dragged the WNBA into mainstream sports conversation in a way that no single player has done for this league in its entire existence. Media outlets that never once covered a WNBA game are now running daily stories. The chatter is loud, it is national, and it is not going away. And in the middle of all of that, in the single most important media moment the league has had in years, Cathy Engelbert, the commissioner, the face of leadership, the person whose entire job is to stand in front of cameras and answer hard questions, decided she would rather not. She said yes to Dan Patrick's team. She let his staff book the slot, prepare the questions, set up the segment. And then, when the moment arrived, she bailed. And she did not bail from far away. She bailed from 100 yards away, in plain sight, with a golf club in her hand. That is not a scheduling error. That is a statement. And it is the most catastrophic statement a commissioner can make.
It's a little too much for them to handle.
Now I want you to understand the specific accusation I am making here, because I want to be precise. I am not saying Cathy Engelbert is a bad person. I am saying she is a catastrophically bad commissioner for this specific moment in this specific league's history. Those are different things, and I want to prove it to you with the words of the people who were actually there. Colin Cowherd, a man who has been in sports media for decades, who has interviewed commissioners, owners, general managers, and heads of state, had a specific and devastating thing to say about what Engelbert's no-show reveals about her fitness for the job. He did not hedge. He did not soften it. He said it directly. Don't take my word for it. Here is exactly what Cowherd said, in his own voice, about what commissioners are and are not allowed to do.
Cathy Engelbert, just way too soft and too weak and too feeble-minded and too incompetent to actually understand this is part of the game. This is the game you play. This is part of the game, Cathy.
He said it. Cameras rolling, no ambiguity. Way too soft and too weak and too feeble-minded and too incompetent to actually understand this is part of the game. That is Colin Cowherd, a man who has defended leagues, executives, and commissioners against unfair criticism for his entire career. Looking at Cathy Engelbert's behavior and using the word incompetent. Not frustrated, not disappointed. Incompetent. Let that word sit with you for a second, because Cowherd does not throw that word around lightly. He is not a bomb thrower. He is a measured veteran analyst who spent the first part of this same segment defending the WNBA's growth, praising the product and acknowledging the complexity of running a hyper-growth organization. And then he landed on incompetent, because that is what the evidence demands. Now let me build the full case. because the golf course moment is just the most visible symptom. The disease goes much deeper.
So,
Well, to be fair, Colin, if they can't get their arms around it, and we're in year 3.
Pass 1. The tactical failure. What Cathy Engelbert did wrong in this specific incident, beyond the optics. Dan Patrick's team booked this interview. They did not ambush her. They did not call her out of nowhere. They went through the proper channels, they scheduled the slot, they prepared the questions, and they gave the WNBA Commissioner every possible opportunity to show up, answer tough questions, and demonstrate that the league's leadership is as mature and capable as its on-court product. That is the deal. That is the arrangement. You get the platform, you get the audience, you get the credibility of being interviewed by one of the most respected sports journalists in America. And in exchange, you show up and you answer the questions. Whether you like the questions or not. Whether the questions are comfortable or not. Whether someone on your staff whispers in your ear that maybe this is not a good idea. And that last part is the most damning detail in the entire story. Because the reporting suggests that someone in Engelbert's orbit may have made the calculation that this particular interview, at this particular moment, with the Caitlin Clark controversy still generating national headlines, was too risky, too unpredictable, too likely to produce a clip that would spread on social media and create more noise. And so the decision was made, consciously or otherwise, to simply not show up, to let the slot go dark, to absorb the embarrassment of a no-show rather than risk the embarrassment of a hard answer. That is not protecting the league, that is abandoning it. Every single person who covers sports for a living, every reporter, every anchor, every producer who books these segments, now knows that the WNBA Commissioner cannot be trusted to honor a commitment when the questions get uncomfortable. That is a catastrophic, irreversible signal to send to the media ecosystem that the league desperately needs on its side. And Dan Patrick said so. Live, on air. He was upset and he voiced it, because that is what professionals do on live radio. He said, and I want you to hear this, that they were just trying to be journalists, just trying to ask questions. And the commissioner said yes and then vanished.
it's a little too much for them to handle.
Pass 2. The pattern of behavior. Because this is not an isolated incident, this is a pattern. The WNBA under Cathy Engelbert has demonstrated a consistent, baffling inability to handle the scrutiny that comes with being a league people actually care about. Colin Cowherd articulated it perfectly when he said the league keeps stepping in it. Not once, not twice, repeatedly. And he was honest enough to spend time asking why. Genuinely asking why a league with this much momentum, this much talent, this much star power, keeps finding ways to generate negative headlines at the exact moments when the story should be overwhelmingly positive. Think about the timeline. Caitlin Clark arrives. The WNBA's ratings explode. Attendance surges. New franchises are announced with billion-dollar valuations. The league is drawing 20,000 fans to games in markets that were not even on the radar a few years ago. The product on the court, by Cowherd's own admission, watching a Dallas game just days before this segment, is genuinely compelling. Good TV, good energy. A legitimate sports product that deserves to be talked about. And yet, the league's leadership consistently finds ways to make the story about the league's leadership failures, rather than the league's basketball excellence. The Caitlin Clark and Elizabeth Balogun situation generated national headlines and dragged the league into a culture war conversation that the front office was completely unprepared to navigate. Posters generated controversy. Personnel decisions generated controversy. And now the commissioner herself has generated controversy by standing on a golf course 100 yards from a scheduled interview and choosing to stay there. Every single one of these moments has one thing in common. The people running this league, the establishment, the old guard, the executives in the offices, are consistently, catastrophically behind the moment. They are reacting to a reality that is moving faster than their institutional instincts can process. And the players, the fans, and the sport itself are paying the price for that gap. Pass 3. The enabler complicity. Who else has been letting this slide? Here is the part of the story the press release skipped. Cathy Engelbert did not create this culture of avoidance by herself. Institutional cowardice is never a solo act. It requires a support system. It requires staff who book interviews and then quietly unbook them when the questions look hard. It requires advisors who calculate that silence is safer than accountability. It requires a broader organizational culture that has decided, somewhere along the way, that the league's image is best protected by controlling access rather than demonstrating competence. And that culture has consequences that extend far beyond one missed interview with Dan Patrick. It means that the reporters who cover this league most aggressively, the ones asking the questions about player treatment, about pay, about the Caitlin Clark phenomenon and how the league is managing it, are being systematically stonewalled. It means that the media ecosystem that could be the WNBA's greatest amplifier is instead becoming increasingly adversarial, because the league's leadership has decided that adversarial questions are better avoided than answered. Colin Cowherd made a comparison that I want you to sit with for a moment. He pointed out that Rob Manfred, the MLB commissioner, a man who has faced some of the most hostile media environments in modern sports history, a man whose decisions on the Houston Astros scandal and the lockout generated genuine, sustained outrage from fans and media alike, still showed up to a New York radio show and stood in the pocket and fielded the questions, whether he liked them or not, whether they were fair or not. He showed up, he answered. Because that is the job. Roger Goodell has done the same. Adam Silver has done the same. These are not men who have been treated gently by the sports media. These are commissioners who have walked into rooms where the entire audience wanted to see them fail, and they answered the questions anyway, because the alternative, the Cathy Engelbert alternative, is worse. The alternative signals weakness. The alternative signals that you are not in control of your own narrative. The alternative signals that you are afraid of your own league. Pass 4. The cost to Caitlin Clark and to every player in this league. I want to be absolutely clear about something. Caitlin Clark did not create this mess. Caitlin Clark is not the problem. Caitlin Clark is the single most valuable asset the WNBA has produced in a generation, possibly ever. And she has done everything right. She has shown up. She has competed. She has generated the ratings, the merchandise sales, the attendance numbers, the media coverage, and the cultural conversation that every league dreams about when they talk about building a superstar. She has been the V12 engine that Cowherd described, the supercharged, high-performance force that the league needed to catapult itself into a new era. And the league's infrastructure, the organizational chassis underneath all of that power, has not been rebuilt to handle it. The league dropped a V12 engine into a car that still has the original frame, the original suspension, the original brakes. And now the whole machine is shaking apart at high speed, and the person whose job it is to pull over and fix the frame is instead playing golf and ignoring her phone. Every player in this league, not just Caitlin Clark, but every single player who has fought for better pay, better travel, better facilities, better media coverage, deserves a commissioner who shows up, who stands in the pocket, who answers the hard questions on live radio and says, yes, we hear the criticism. Here is what we are doing about it. Here is our plan. Here is our accountability. Those players deserve that. The fans who showed up 20,000 strong in Toronto deserve that. The sport deserves that. And right now, they are not getting it. Now here is where the analysis gets genuinely interesting. Because Colin Cowherd, to his enormous credit, did something in this segment that most commentators are not willing to do. He tried to be fair. He genuinely tried to construct a charitable explanation for why the WNBA keeps stumbling. He argued that the league is not run by dummies. He argued that hypergrowth is genuinely hard to manage, that any business experiencing this kind of explosive expansion would struggle to get its arms around it. That the sheer volume of new challenges, new franchises, new travel standards, new media scrutiny, new star power, new controversy, would overwhelm even a well-run organization. And I respect that analysis. I think there is real truth in it. The Gordon Ramsay analogy is genuinely useful. When your restaurant is small and it fails, nobody notices. When your restaurant is famous and it fails, it makes the newspapers. The downside of popularity is scrutiny. The privilege of being a major league is being criticized like a major league. The WNBA is now big enough to be held to the same standard as the NFL, the NBA, and MLB. And that is uncomfortable. And that is hard. And yes, some of the stumbling is genuinely explained by the difficulty of managing explosive growth. But here is where the charitable explanation runs out. And I want you to listen to this second clip, because it is the moment in this conversation where the honest answer breaks through the polite framing. Watch this. This is what happens when you give a smart analyst enough time to think through his own argument. So to be fair, Colin, if they can't get their arms around it and we're in year 3, there might be a bunch of dummies. There it is. That is the honest answer breaking through the diplomatic framing. 3 years. 3 years of explosive growth. 3 years of Caitlin Clark. 3 years of new franchises and billion-dollar valuations and 20,000-person crowds and exploding ESPN ratings. 3 years to rebuild the chassis for the V12 engine. And the commissioner is still ghosting Dan Patrick from a golf course 100 yards away. At some point, the hyper-growth excuse expires. At some point, we couldn't get our arms around it becomes we chose not to. At some point, the people running this league have to be held accountable for the gap between the product on the court and the leadership in the office. And that point, based on everything we have documented in this video, is now. So let me give you my verdict. My staked predictions. The things I believe are coming, based on the evidence we have laid out today. First prediction. Cathy Engelbert's tenure as WNBA Commissioner is now operating on borrowed time. Not because of this one incident in isolation, but because this incident is the crystallization of a pattern that the league's owners, the people who actually hold the power in this organization, are watching very closely. The Valkyries have a billion-dollar valuation. The Portland Fire and Toronto Tempo are serious business investments by serious business people. These are not vanity projects. These are calculated bets on the future of women's basketball. And the people making those bets did not write those checks to watch their commissioner play golf while Dan Patrick goes live on air to explain why she is a no-show. The owners of these new franchises want professional, aggressive, accountable leadership. And the golf course moment is not the image of professional, aggressive, accountable leadership. Second prediction. The media ecosystem around the WNBA is going to get harder, not easier, for the league's front office to manage. Because every journalist who watched Dan Patrick's segment, every producer, every booker, every reporter who covers women's basketball, now has a data point. The WNBA commissioner cannot be trusted to honor a commitment when the questions get uncomfortable. That data point will be used. The next time a reporter requests an interview with Engelbert, they will remember this. The next time a segment producer is deciding whether to invest resources in covering the WNBA, they will remember this. The institutional credibility damage from a single golf course no-show is not repaired by a single good interview later. It compounds. Third prediction. Caitlin Clark will continue to be the only reason the league's national numbers hold, because she is the V12 engine in a car that still has not been properly rebuilt. And as long as the chassis is fragile, as long as the leadership is this soft, this avoidant, this unwilling to stand in the pocket and answer hard questions, every controversy, every stumble, every moment of institutional cowardice is going to fall disproportionately on her shoulders. The conversation about the WNBA's problems will keep circling back to the Caitlin Clark era, not because she is causing the problems, but because she is the only person in this story who is doing her job with the full weight of the moment on her back. And here is the third receipt. Here is the clip nobody on mainstream television wants to play for you, because of what it proves about the gap between the league's performance and its leadership. This is Cowherd describing exactly what the WNBA has right now, and exactly what the organization around it is not equipped to handle. Here it is. In his own words, it's a little too much for them to handle. A little too much for them to handle. That is the verdict on the WNBA's front office from one of the most measured, most credible, most consistently fair analysts in American sports media. Not from a troll, not from a hater, not from someone who wants the league to fail. From someone who watched a Dallas game the day before this segment, praised the product, praised the energy, praised the TV presentation, and then looked at the leadership and said it is a little too much for them to handle. That is damning. That is the honest, surgical, unavoidable conclusion from someone who was actively trying to be generous. And it lands on Cathy Engelbert's desk like a verdict, because she is the person whose job it is to make sure that the organization can handle what the product is delivering. Caitlin Clark is right now, in this moment, doing everything the league needs her to do. She is showing up, she is competing, she is generating the numbers, the headlines, the cultural conversation, the merchandise sales, the attendance records. She is standing in the pocket and taking the hits and delivering the performance. She is the V12 engine running at full power, and the car around her is shaking, and the person responsible for rebuilding that car is on a golf course 100 yards from the interview she was supposed to give. That is the story. That is the undeniable, brutal, mathematical reality of where the WNBA stands right now. Not on the court. The court is fine. The court is better than fine. The court is the best it has ever been. But in the offices, in the commissioner's suite, in the institutional infrastructure that is supposed to protect and amplify everything happening on that court, there is a catastrophic, glaring, unavoidable leadership vacuum. And every single person who loves this league, who wants to see it succeed, who has been watching the attendance numbers and the ratings and the new franchise announcements with genuine excitement, every one of those people deserves better than what Cathy Engelbert gave Dan Patrick on that golf course. Before I close, I want to leave you with one forced choice question. And I want you to answer it in the comments right now, because the answer tells us everything about where this league is headed. Here is the question. Does Cathy Engelbert survive the next full WNBA season as commissioner, yes or no? Not should she, not do you like her. Does she survive? Because the owners of those new billion-dollar franchises are watching. The media ecosystem is watching, the players are watching. And every single stumble, every golf course no-show, every avoided interview, every moment of institutional cowardice adds another name to the list of people who are quietly asking whether this league needs different leadership at the top to match the extraordinary product it has on the floor. Drop your answer below. Yes, she survives, or no, she is gone before the next full season ends. I want to see where this community stands. And if this video gave you something to think about, if it made you see the gap between the WNBA's potential and its leadership more clearly than you did before, hit the like button right now. It takes 2 seconds and it tells the algorithm that this conversation matters. Subscribe to Rim Run and hit the notification bell so you are there the moment the next story breaks. Because in this league right now, the next story is never more than 48 hours away. We will be here when it drops. See you on the next one.